YouTube sometimes has a minute. There we go. All right, that's what I needed. Thank you. I for those of you that are watching at this time, I won't be watching the Zoom threads. So I mean, I'm sorry, I won't be watching the YouTube thread because on that thread you ask questions. But I since I'm one of the two people talking, it's too complicated for me to do both at the same time. So this is Myra Jackson, and I am Tantramat. And there is 99% of what we participate in creation that has no language in the present perception of language that human beings presently exist in. But I'm going to tell you why I invited her and was thrilled because time is like magic for me. Was thrilled she could make it today because we have just done 4 or 5 conversations about our right to evolve. And it's not just our right, it's our privilege, it's our joy, it's our yumminess to be a species that can constantly change, constantly evolve, and constantly become part of greater systems of reality, which its actual DNA is a part of. So you would probably notice if you watched Myra and I communicate, if it would be very confusing because it looks cryptic or not sense making. But it's because when you're listening from a creation-based consciousness, not a person-based consciousness, and this doesn't leave people out, but people are part of a greater creation. Therefore, I'm assessing this, and Myra, you can correct me, but the reason I am comfortable with Myra and some others, Sandra Fernandez, is because we come from that creation-based intelligence reactivated in us through wild and crazy means. And so talking from that creation-based system includes human beings, but it actually includes the greater systems of which we're a part, which we as the traditional human being, and I'm not saying it's any of you watching, but the traditional human being is only paying attention to a very short lifespan and a very individuated life and pretty immediate circumstances and how circumstances beyond that affect it. But there's so many more of us now that are paying attention to the systems of creation themselves and how they interface with this planet, how the cosmos and the planetary and cosmological natures of existence work. But the really amazing thing about a human being, which makes us somewhat devolved at this point, somewhat in a devolutionary for a majority, is because our ability to perceive and to pick up on and register has devolved, has devolved. And so my invitation to Myra today was basically Myra Tantra speak. And because it's rude for me to try to build a bridge to the limited mentality that humanity has been incarcerated in. It's rude. You know, the first time I ever heard Bucky Fuller, I passed out. First time I ever heard Werner Erhard, I passed out. First time that I walked in to become a minister at an interfaith school called Sanctuary, Rabbi Gelberman started singing the song of Shekinah, the wife of God. I blacked out. So my source-based nature, all of our source-based nature, there is a mental handicap, a neurological handicap that when the information begins to go back into the spiral of creation of which we're a part, there's neural wiring that shuts off, that literally blacks you out, makes you sleepy. All of a sudden, you can't take in the information. Sometimes very erratic or even violent emotions can occur because somewhere back in time, and I'm not doing that today, but somewhere back in time, a series of events happened that all human beings were left with was I must survive, which is good enough. It's good enough. Now we're going to take it from there. So thank you for being with us. Thank all of you that watch later. It's really been exciting to see the amount of people that come on later and watch, and it's a privilege to have you here. So I'm going to turn it over to Myra and the Myra Tantra contingency here, and whatever's on your mind, honey.
Oh my. Tantra, thank you for opening up a space so that we can do what we do as field beings together in the way that we speak and allow these registers to present to us what can be brought in at this time. And, with deep respect for uh, what human beings are going through and what we're walking through in this moment. I just got a flash, though, as you were speaking, that I want to sort of poke at a bit, if we can. And that is the whole idea of type, uh, archetypes, life force, vital life force that hangs out in archetypes. Because you got present to something that I think is still reverberating in the field and will for some time. And it got awakened in me the moment you said, hey, survival good enough. We'll take it from here. And this has to do with the whales, and the message you receive from the whales. Um, in many ways, this has been echoing as if it were waiting to be brought into some form of expression, which you did through this dream. And maybe that's something that should be shared here because it seems to be something that is showing up in this field, and that is the scope and the range of involvement of many beings who are participating in this moment. And I see it as a fold in time that takes us to that next iteration, right? You've been walking with prophecy, I've been walking with prophecy of what these times meant. And that container, that those forces that were within that container of prophecy is why I recognized you. And I went back to look at what that was about. And that was in 2020. It was late spring. And you were already in this conversation about the next that was being what you were being shown. You were in contact, as you always are, with the primordial mother and in your own deep listening. And you were coming out of a body of work and seeing that there was a next level of work coming. And I entered at that time. And literally June 7th in 2020, I was in a dialogue with the field of Tantra Mat to participate in that next round. And everything you promised would happen did in time. Everything. And right now, from the what is being built upon the bodies and rounds of work, we're coming into now. And I feel if we look at that message, that dream of the whales, we will see the foundation for what is coming collectively to support the necessary coherence needed as we move forward. So, is there any part of you that wants to share that story? You probably have on CreateAWorld, but it feels today in the context of it all that for it to be shared again today would be helpful for what we have
I
heard
agree.
about.
I want to share it two ways. You see, there's nothing Myra and I can talk about that isn't involved in all the things we're involved in. It's a little bit like if you're in a web, you pull one string of the web, it reverberates through the entire webbing. And so the minute you started talking, Myra, I started thinking about this privilege I have of I tried to do this in a short section, but for those of you that don't know, in 1994, I was visited by what I thought was God. It's lovely when we're in dream state, we're so innocent. And I remember I just kept going, oh my God, you're God. And now I'm pretty sure it was an angel or a higher level being. But he told me about this time, and he said, please do not have them be not afraid. Have them be not afraid. So that's the first thing I want to say. And it's on Kindle on Amazon if you want to read it. It's pretty fascinating, actually, even for me. In fact, I was saying to the man I'm in relationship with, he had a series of things happen that were things I predicted, but I didn't really predict them. I just said things like, well, don't worry, your housemate will be gone for 4 days and you can get everything done. Simple things. But then it plays out in time. And I said to him, I'm just as surprised as you are. It's not me doing it. It's me part of something that, just like we pay attention to, well, just be careful to open the door or you'll run into it. I mean, it lives in the same frequency level. But as you were talking, I was so excited, Myra, because all of a sudden I can say, and I don't need to be on this group of people called Women Heart to Heart, all the war going on in the Middle East is now present out of what Myra said. It's now present in the webbing. And because one mother said she didn't know how to, two mothers said they didn't know how to keep their children from being afraid. And all of a sudden, as you were talking, I could reverberate through the field, have them connect with the whales, have them connect with the whales. And then that connects into what a lot of people call lucid dreaming. It's just I go places when I sleep. And one of the places that visited me, or I visited, it was a shared field, was a whale, gigantic whale, actually. But the whale represented all whales, all kinds of whales, and said something very simple to me. Said, tell them, because that's what people like me, we get messages. Tell them that everyone is in a bubble. Each person has an individual bubble now, and that individual bubble is up against the rib cage of a whale, an individual person, an individual whale. No details on how many or who. It wasn't, I knew it was not limited to the people I was working with. I knew it was whatever they're paying attention to. And he said, this is so you can remember the original language, that it's in that sound, it's in that vibration, that the original sensation, the original vibration of what we are to creation here on this planet, and what creation is to us, and why we are so precious. Even though we've been damaged, we are so precious. So that's the story.
You see, there's a lot there in the narrative of human being that points to a type. And I would speak of this type as something that has resonance and connection with what source is life. And there's something in us that understands what that means. There's something that it allows us to travel to a meta state once we make that connection, in which we can remember and we can draw down, if you will, because we know that, the prepositions don't really work. What's always here and always with us, and this is the big one, right? Is that we do talk about building, and in many ways that is exactly what's happening. But for me, my experience is it's here, and I'm being called to be so fierce in what I know that it just shatters everything else that's not. and that in the shattering, it just breaks down like imagine the beauty of that, right? Of just seeing something that you've built like sand castles on an ocean, and now you let it just fall away. And what remains is the life force, the resonance. The resonance is there. And and so I'm very, not only do I honor being present as a human being here now at this fold, this dismantling of the geometric mind in which we've enjoyed and entertained and been on this venture of separation. There's never been a time in it that that has been what is deeply true. We cannot be severed from, in truth, from what source is life. So now to stand and be fierce in that knowing is a place to stand, and there's not the place where you stand there encompasses all. It doesn't require the geometry, so to speak, of resonance, doesn't require the separation and division. But this is such a beautiful message that you've been carrying about the whale, because there is a place, while it's difficult, whatever may be difficult that we are witnessing and paying attention to, and it truly is, whether it's the Jordan River that you can imagine yourself standing in, or a forest in which you're familiar and you can smell the forest and the soil in the earth. It is the place you can stand where we are united and we are in touch with the original instructions, and we know ourselves to be linked, connected fully with Source. This is really helpful in these times, because what I see, Tantra, is that we're moving out of, because the geometric mind that's in that flat dimensional space is showing us that everything is in motion, everything is moving as we are, which means in reality, we really are vehicles. Collectively, we are vehicles. We are moving with creation. And creation is on the move in a big way, and we're all invited. We all have a ticket.
Yeah, two things I want to frame. One is that I loved what you said about the shattering because I've been through my own shattering the last 5 months, and I accomplished something that doesn't would take 4 hours of conversation. So we're not bringing it up today, but I accomplished something that when you said that about the shattering, it's there are those of us that can't afford to shatter now because something is there. In other words, it's very delicate awakening a being who's been dormant and asleep for a long time. You're just really careful. You're really careful. If somebody was frozen solid, you bring them back easy. If someone was down at the bottom of the ocean, you give them time for their systems to recalibrate. But something happened this year. The big thing I want to say is I was totally stunned because I had 10 people literally in the space of 48 hours ask me if I was going to do prophetics in June. I've never, 22 years, I've never done prophetics except in January. And then jokingly, I said on Facebook, well, if one more person asks me, I'll have to start hee-hawing. Well, 55 people asked me. That's indicative. That is indicative of that they have repositioned themselves,
Yeah.
that they want to do a prophetic, not a developmental, not an initial, but a prophetic. They want to hear where they are in the womb of creation. It just moves me to tears. In fact, even saying it makes me want to sob because it's such an indicator. And I too have noticed that I have crystal clarity. that people might hear that like I think I'm always right about everything. No, I'm just crystal clear about where I am and what I'm doing and where I'm standing. And that's all each of us has is our own ability to be crystal clear about ourselves, not being crystal clear about what we think another should do or be or have or whatever those things are. But see, what you said there really startled me because I feel so free because I don't have to worry about watching them come back online. I don't have to worry about being so tender and careful as they breathe once again, as they awaken once again, because their source base is resourced in them. And they did that through their own agony, through their own pain, through their own travels, through their own journey.
Mm.
So I'm elated. And it's actually what had me fight for my life
Yeah.
these last 5 months, because either I was going to give in, or the system was going to give in to its own devolutionary path, or it was going to reawaken itself to be part of what you said was better than what I said, a new framework of what is rising.
Mm.
And it is rising. It's evidential everywhere. Just that simple thing about the prophetics, just shocking, is just shocking. So that's one thing. But the other thing, the other mystical information I got last November, November seems to be my month for the veils opening, and was the presence of the fierce primordial feminine, the banshee, no more.
Mm.
And I knew that it was like a harmonic, just like the whale visitation.
Mm.
What they're harmonics. They're
Mhm.
not things telling us what's going to happen.
Mm.
They're new harmonies. They're new um, fragrances. They're new movements of reality that go back to points of origin.
Mm.
And at those points of origin, we get to then resource as ourselves, source new points of origin. And we're just there. Nobody has to learn this. And if a few of us get at it, it'll ripple through the whole culture of humanity because it is humanity's source point. Go ahead.
So beautiful. Yeah, this the whole idea of the shattering, um, you being able to see that a part of the process that you went through. And you know, this is what's up for humanity. This is exactly what's up for us. This is what's rising. It's this very opportunity to um I I, I just want to acknowledge how you spoke to that slow, careful, tender place that we enter into as we are transitioning in that manner, because it really is quite a tender place. And you what you left me with as you were wrapping that up was how many um, representations of this have been in the field for some time. And yet, as you worked with in the field of Tantra Mat, you worked with how do you make a place, a space for it to rise in time. And that container needed to be there. And that's part of the gentle way in which we do transition, is to prepare the container. We prepare the way. There was great preparation done for this walk I'm doing in this body this lifetime. And when I look at it, when I look at the care and what I would encounter, um, you know, being in a body as we walk through this time, I I'm telling you, I'm inspired by and in awe of the process. The process itself to me is awe-inspiring. And this is why I can say that as we begin to let go and release whatever personas we have created, right, to walk and the identities that we've been walking with, as those shatter, that survival bubble that we have perceived, it becomes something that is liberating, that opens us up into the font of energy that we're a part of. You can look at this,
Mm.
opening Milky Way above my head. I love that because the design of a human being with that natto cord at the very center of this vortex we are, um, when we can really feel that, we know that that which is sourcing life is coming right through our own natto cord. In the center of these forms, we're moving in. And that in these times, we will witness the um, collectively, because this is how we come to know it, is when Tantra Mat goes through her process and finds herself on another platform in a with access to a meta state that allows her to be very clear that she's a part of a font of energy that's sourcing life, and and that everyone else around her has that same connection, hence the well.
Mm.
And so the sphere, uh, I can't help now. There's a symphony going off because there's sound deeply associated with the transformation, the transmutation that is underway. This transmutative wholeness is a restoration of the full spectrum of light, of the full range of movement and sound that human beings can access as we move through this.
Mm.
So the fact that there's new prophetics here is so powerful at mid-year because the energies that are walking in that are available now have laid the foundation for a new platform. And so we can see from this meta state, and it is a meta state. You've been teaching about the meta points, the meta states, from the state that we can occupy now, that we can access together, not just a few one-offs, but together.
Mm.
This is a big moment for humanity. We've had avatars walking in single doses because we haven't been able to, as a group field, as a monad. You work with these algorithms all the time. You set them up in everything you do. Because what's happening is there's a fortiginal spin being created. And you're at work. And you have seen others that are coming in to assist with calibrating that collective spin. These are fortiginal forces. And we are beginning to organize ourselves. This awakening that's happening, what we're really building is we're building momentum to enter into the spin that allows for the spiral, this movement, fortiginal movement of these life forces that are resonating literally through sound and light, moving us into the next. It's a light event that is underway.
Mm.
And the vehicles are positioning, the containers are by the great primordial mother, these mothers of the elements, these other forces, and the very ether of which we're swimming in is moving us in to this beautiful harmonic that you spoke of. And the whales, the idea of the whale's body and that position on a web is an angle.
Mm.
And that angle is 120 degrees. We know what it is. So for each sphere to be positioned, there's a monad there because whales move in pods, do they not? And the archetype of the well has always been there. Over time, the stories of those that went into different metastates and different dimensions, the archetype was being swallowed by the well, you know? And so these date back far, far back in time. And what's nice is even before some of the other events that occurred here. And so I find uh, in terms of our own coded systems, that what you became aware of in that messaging is technical. It's mythopoetic, but it's technical. And that's what
Very,
blows me away.
very technical.
It's very technical.
Couple of things I want to bring in. I want to bring in personality I want to bring in little clips. I don't want to put them together. I don't think we should put anything together right now. I don't mean you and me. I mean any of us in the planet right now. If we could imagine a gigantic piece of paper and these islands of consciousness are waking up in the empty space of the human mind, but we can't put them together because there's still so much missing ocean that connects them all together and gives us back our mind of creation, basically. And that's why I wrote The Mind of Creation, because it would regenerate that mind for the people that could make it through the book. But this fierce primordial feminine, this banshee, no more, the banshee no more. It's not an action-based statement. It's a meta reality. It's a reality where simply something is no more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing I want to put a clip on the pin on the corkboard with. The other one is every now and then I just need you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just need Sandra. I just need the others. Because even though there is the framework of the interactive, interrelated world of those watching, for me, you and I are sitting in a gigantic web right now,
Mm-hmm.
just the two of us. Source point.
Mm-hmm.
And everything you've been being and doing and having, and everything I've been being and doing and having, all our crocheted pieces, those islands, when we can come together, they crochet together.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even need to know what or where or who or how. Because the one thing I've known forever is that when human beings are happy, they don't really care what made them happy. When human beings are free to be, they don't really care what got them there. In fact, those of us that work on the webbing and the restoration of the matrices and have to find ways to block out that which is still incoherent, still deharmonized, still aberrated, just for a moment, just till we can build enough so it can contain itself also. There doesn't need to be many of us. But I want to reinforce something you said about this great joy that you're experiencing, that I'm also experiencing. Because this is what we've been at work about, the fabric. Because we happen to love human beings being happy. Because that's how human beings are actually designed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we say the fierce primordial female, it's the same way that Christianity, I think Judaism, also Islam, I think all three did it, but correct me if I'm wrong, because I would like to know if I'm wrong. But they all talked about the wrath of God, the wrath of masculine. There go my balloons. My hearts will be up in a minute, I'm sure. And but we're talking about the fierce primordial female that just shifts everything. And then what was just is no more.
Mhm.
She's the root base here.
Mhm.
She's the birther. She's the destroyer.
Mhm.
But that that fierceness isn't that wrath of that masculine deity. That fierceness is we are her beloveds and we are one of her forms and she doesn't trash her forms.
Mhm.
And she is an intelligence that is always, and you'll have to give me the right word because I don't know it, but always in some that place has always been humming that tune.
Mhm.
We're the ones, we're the beautiful little creatures that can do two things. We can perceive. We're not just busy wagging our tail and looking for food.
Mhm.
And we can say now. We can say now. We can shorten the timeline. And of course, you know me and time are
Oh, yes,
lovers and all my
truly.
mates. But that's what's starting to happen. It's amazing to watch, not just in the cultural community, the collective community of the field of Tantra, but the people in the periphery reporting on Facebook, other people talking about what's happening in their existence. There is this rest. I don't know that word either. Restoration, return, rejuvenation. I don't know what it is, but I know that it's no longer all the time we had to put in to bake the bread. We're in
Mhm.
we're in the bread we'll now bake. And
Mhm.
to be part of it now, I think should be our interest.
Mhm.
Not that old story about one of my favorite pet peeves is a story about the creature who baked the bread, but nobody helped her. But once it was cooked, they all wanted a piece of it. But it's important to remember that we're part of the baking
Mhm.
of ourselves. There's no it without us, and there's no us without it. And my sense is there will be plenty. Could very well be people who are still living out a story they're attracted to. I just happen to be attracted to this one because I remember it, and I remember it well. So just over to you.
Yeah, that memory, um, and that choosing, just knowing this is a story and this is the what, I'm sticking to it kind of thing, is really the kind of fierceness that I'm talking about. I mean, really, it's like it's the it. I realize it could feel, wrathful, to say fierce, but no, it's intense,
Yes.
fully engaged because the brilliance of it and the evidence of it is so apparent. There's just nothing else that can grab your attention. It can draw from it. Nothing can, because the vitality is in what you are present to, and it's fiercely present to you. It has a fierceness to it. It's a quality, and this is this quality when you are in these meta states. This is why, it's really interesting, our perceptual field, but the nature of color, the nature of the whole, reality, felt and otherwise, just everywhere you go, it is, um, you are so focused on it, it materializes. It comes into in every state that you have access to. It permeates, it erupts into being. And this is that state that, uh, the feminine, when it, roars that in and just gets there, targets that. it is, and always has been, as if anything else other than that never was. I mean, it's so obliterated, you know. So when you when you know that that is something you can call in, and you can, um, and it's extraordinary. And yet, what we're up to, at least what I see, is that collectively we're able to perceive that shining, resplendent brilliance being. And you see, I trust it so much. There's not an issue around it. You know, I'm not even looking for evidence. It's just what lives. It's what lives and moves and has my being. And and I can see what's captured. I can see it. I can see all those aspects, right? Um, and we're in this moment of this all showing itself. And this is why it was so interesting, you know, the tornado that was coming through, and there have been tornadoes everywhere. And I mean, just the way the vortex of of a tornado moves is, it really is, it depicts what is possible now, of how we can literally move in these times into a meta state that refashions what is more deeply true. And all those things that we speak of in terms of beauty and proportion and harmony, everything along those lines present themselves. Because when something snaps back into its design after having been morphed and in, you know, all other kind of contorted places, it's memory, it's recall, and it returns. It snaps into place. And it was really interesting being with the movement of the tornado that was circling around, because I really had called in for some help with the pesticides that had been sprayed, and there was no hint of them on the morning walk this morning. It was such a little thought and
Yeah.
such a strong response, you see. So I was aware of that, and right through the corridor. And it's a reminder that we're participating in something, and that there are these islands of coherence that are present here now where we can stand. And as we stand there in recognition of the coherence that we can share together, the light is weaving and connecting. These meta points are on the move. I love when you use the language of metaing, because this is what's happening.
And people should notice the how do I put this? That there is not a high loss of life. It's so interesting to me. I remember when there was a hurricane coming through Florida a while back, and two of the people, one lived on either side of the coast of Florida, and I just said, "Well, just tell her where to go to make the most difference." And the most difference happened to be the swamp, because hurricanes regenerate swampland. And it was so beautiful 45 minutes before to see her just shift direction like that and hit the swamp with everything she had. The reason I'm saying this is that often I don't share these things, but with you in in this field I can. Because somehow we got to unwrap that wrath thing, punishment thing. You know, the thing that I went through those 5 months, I kept looking. For those of you who don't know, PVCs are what make the heart, electrical pulse of the heart work, and mine weren't working, and they got increasingly worse. not working to the point that if they don't work, I'm not here. So it's that simple. But the interesting thing through those months, I knew I had to get to the root of something that was no longer. And now you may have to help me with your perception because I'm not unpacked it all the way. But the first thing I knew was I had to get at something that made me not want to live biologically. I don't mean my personality. I mean made my body not want to live. And I was literally getting up in the morning and just tending to every minute and what the body needed, not trying to make it do anything. I was completely its servant. And I never experienced that before because when I came here, I knew I was a high sensitive and I knew the odds of my making it were slim already. I've had 5 diseases and nobody could even diagnose what they were, but they were killing me because I was allergic to this place. I didn't fit. So many of us are just allergic to what happened here. But here's what happened. All of a sudden, I realized, and I can't do the sentence, which is why I'm a little stalling a bit. But I realized that I had embedded as a human being. I'm not saying as Tantra or as Daimyo Spoten, which is my original name. But in the human dynamic had been embedded, we deserve to be punished. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe when I threaded it out. I couldn't believe I didn't realize that death before our time, illness before our time, mental consternation, excessive worry was all built on as long as we took our punishment, we could be here.
Hmm.
An incredibly aberrated framework that didn't come from the original nature of the original design here.
Mm-hmm.
It came from something that happened with gods that used us for their pleasure, for their needs. And I just had that much liquid in me, that much that said, I have to get to where there was never a thought of anyone ever needed to be punished, ever. And then everything that the reason I'm saying this, different people may have different kodaks. They may have different coding, but that was mine. Take responsibility for everything. The personality started to take, form to take responsibility, everything. This need to make sure people weren't punished, all this stuff began to untangle. But where I'm left is not is not a new place I can describe. Where I'm left is nowhere and in nothing. So I can live again, not just interpret my living. So when you talk about this joyful moment and the intensity of it and the rigor of it and the fierceness of it, it is fierce because the systemic palette of human being has said no more. Biologically, mentally, emotionally, has said no more. And if we can just remember, if we could just get separate from our personalities enough to remember that this beautiful personality we have got us through to here. And we can embrace it and love it and put it up on the shelf and not try to make it all right with itself anymore. It did its job. And that we actually are being born newly, which is the promise of every avatar. Promise of every avatar.
That is, yeah, this is the end of of the show where the curtain closes and you can enjoy all the creativity that has gone into all of the characters because there are many mansions, many theaters in these worlds. in these realms. And we have been served in this journeying, in this adventure of life with the persona, the many personas, these identities, the garments, all of it, all the accoutrements of the journey. And there comes a time, even in the deep work that I've done as a Vajrayana Buddhist and others, that you let go when the result occurs of all the accoutrements of the practice. They all are just, they're set aside. And there is that beautiful rejoining and joining. And it's a beautiful stage in the process because in the joining there's great warmth
Mm.
and it's a fire. And it's a long stage. There's a lot of preparation, all those recitations of mantras and all of that. But once you lay down the accoutrements when the joining happens, that's the heart that's open. That's the fierce heart shining, blazing, and everything that was there to help you on the journey, whether they were walking sticks or the buckets, whatever you thought you needed to bring along on the journey, you can set them down as you're called into that great cauldron of the heart. And there in that state, you can register. The registers literally, they open and you can feel the origins
Mm.
present. They're pulsing, they're alive. They defy being placed into forms.
One of my favorite quotes of the Buddha is, true enlightenment occurs when all needs are met. And that it is so shocking to me to, in such a good way, to even ask myself the question, what would I do if all my needs were met?
Mm-hmm.
And but more than that is, who would I be if all my needs are met?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is the part I think is, that's why this is so transitional from a psychic point of view. This is so transitional for me between now and 2027, the beginning of 2027. Because I'm very clear we don't know what our needs are.
Mm-hmm.
And we've made survive, we've been conned into only survive as our
Mm-hmm.
needs. Punish or avoid being punished. These are pretty insane if people would just look at them. But what I'm finding really fascinating is I'm really clear. I was given this timeline 40, well, almost 50 years ago now. I was given 2023 to the end of 2026. The beginning of 2023 to the end of 2026 would be the fastest renaissance humanity had ever experienced. And then I balanced that, talk about it, me and my equations. Then I balanced that on the Buddha. Enlightenment happens when all needs are met.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start figuring out the coordinates and the calibrations.
Mm-hmm.
Not to get there because we're not the causal factor,
Mm-hmm.
but to keep calibrating us so we can register it as it occurs. So we can register, oh my God, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like the dentist I'm going to today, they had 3 openings this morning. I had full choice, and they're normally booked for 3 months. And the dentist's name was Jeremy, my son, my
Oh,
angelic son.
oh my.
And I mean, the need really needed to be met.
Mm-hmm.
And I even wrote it on our transformative wholeness. I said, well, we'll see how my mind does here. Because I've got the mind chattering about maybe he's not any good because there were 3 openings. And I've got the other going, maybe needs are just being met.
All needs being met for sure.
And so there's this phenomenon of calibration, this, and you said something earlier, and I always lose the word. You talked about the noetic or the null, starts with an N,
The
thread,
notochord, yeah.
not a chord. Would you just address, in regard of everything we've said? We've
Mm.
got about 5 minutes. I just really want people to get anchored in that thought pattern, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we really do have that chord. It real truly is a space, and everything in terms of the human being is has that field dynamic built in. And the notochord is often it's that subtle sushumna, that channel that moves through us, that whole connection to what source is life. I mean, we're just breathing in and breathing out this font of life force and resonance. Our design is set to be, to receive that and to emit that, to transmit and radiate the breath of life. And so it's sourced through us and it's in our design. So that tube torus that we look at all the time, our subtle body has every element, every dynamic of that tube is there running right through us as the notochord. And so as we developed in utero, everything folded around that notochord. And part of what's also happening as we mutate in these bodies, because that's what's happening, is we, of course, many talk about dysregulation. In many ways, yes, and so, we've been dysregulated, and yet the body has the potential to restore its own sense of being regulated to what source is life. And right now, the primordial being that is this planet is inviting us into becoming regulated with her and moving with creation at the level of the earth being is a beautiful dynamic to be a part of right now. It's changing us. And so that renaissance you speak of, because those same the years that were given to me were 2024, 2025, and 2026. And I have a lot of maps because all I've been doing is chronicling what it looked like when we got to the moment in which we would, um, in the timing, the way I talked about it was as if we were being evoked and we were being evoked into the sacred state again, that meta state, and that we would be able to tell the story of what it was like as we changed, which would be being conscious, that cognitive awareness would be being able to tell the story as we live it. That would be an important part of human beings at this stage. And you've been talking about it all along through many ways. You have brought down a modality for that, the template for it in time, which is why I marvel at what you've done. But in these years, we will see that without going through the dying process, not, that we will be able to actually leap forward in these bodies and we would be able to tell the story of it. And part of it will be a story of our nervous system being, coming into regulation with the larger systems of life and those greater systems of life of which we're a part.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think the thought, and see if there's a thought you want to leave people with, because I love that thought you just left people with. So that works for me, but
For me.
my plotting. But the thought I want to leave people with, and I may even have the words wrong, but I'm going to use them anyway. I love what you said about we're being evoked back into the the that which is real here. And going back to the 4 weeks that we just sort of culminated the field with our right to evolve, restoring our right to evolve consciously as conscious beings, because we're going to evolve whether we are conscious or not, basically. But there's this other part called evocation and invocation. And for me, the beauty of what I'm watching in human beings is they are now consciously coming to the party. They are doing their own invocations as she evokes her invitation. We're invoking our invitation to her. Like it's both and.
Mhm.
There's no imbalance.
Mhm.
There's no lack of sustenance right now.
Mhm.
And it can weather the storms that are coming. It can truly weather the storms that are coming. Thank you. I tried to capture you for
That's
two
just
weeks.
wonderful. Thank
I
you.
didn't succeed. I want to see if you have a last minute statement, or are we in our pause?
I think that we are in the pause. We have you've given some words to this renaissance, and it's earth-led. Uh,
Yes.
the primordial mother is leading this renaissance.
Yeah. Beautiful, honey. Take care.
All
All
right,
my
you
love
too. And
forever.
oh, I love the story of the dentist. Your needs are met.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care,
Done.
everyone.
Okay, bye
Many
now.
blessings.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.